Carteret COnnects.
Long time no see.
Mike McHugh, Richard Clark. On this September 2nd, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, Japan surrendered to the U.S. forces in Tokyo Bay.
That was today?
September 2nd, 1945. Because remember, the atomic bombs were dropped in early August, and it took that while to get the Emperor.
It didn't take long.
Didn't take long. Well, it took two, yeah. But anyway, so they signed it on the deck of the Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Imagine what that must have been like. Just imagine like the people back here, in the United States that had been at war for. Well, you know what? It sounded like years ago. It sounded like, boy, World War II was 4.5 years, 4 years, long time. How long we've been in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
I mean, some of these men and women have made their career
out of being over there. Yeah.
In the service, or back and forth 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So if you're in the armed services or a veteran, we salute you.
Yeah.
And if there's any World War II veterans out there, my goodness, there's a few left. But anyway, big day, VJ Day.
Wasn't there some behind the scenes stuff of why MacArthur wanted it to be on that boat? Wasn't that boat almost sunk or something?
It might have been, from the beginning at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
I think they
redid it
because they were still getting torpedoed. I mean, nobody told the Japanese that the war was over.
Yeah.
In fact, many of them up through into the 40s and the 50s were still in the caves. That didn't realize the war was
I remember
over.
seeing a movie about that.
Yeah, scary.
Some movie, it was fiction, but still.
Yeah. So anyway, that's history.
I must say, I've always been, whatever the word you look at, I've always liked the surrender part of how they always kind of throw it in the face of whoever. Hitler did it to the French with that train.
With the victory go the spoils.
Yeah. That train, and when it made them sign that, it was just...
Imagine how it was for the Japanese, the Emperor of Japan.
That's what I mean.
And they were unconditional.
And we bring a boat from Pearl Harbor in there.
And I think that's part of the reason why Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the August 6th and the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So August 9th, the last bombing, they said, we got more where that came from, right? So you're talking about 22 days plus 24 days, more than 3 weeks. And I think it was because the Emperor was saying, we're not surrendering, and if we do, it's on these terms. And MacArthur and Truman said, it's unconditional surrender.
Yeah.
And they did that, unconditional surrender. So
took the military the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So that's this day.
Well, it's like a lot of what happened in the surrender in World War I was what kind of stoked the fire for World War II.
Because it wasn't clean.
Right.
Yeah.
And what they forced them to do and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
There's a good book on that, and I don't remember the name of it. Maybe it's Guns of August.
The British made hell of that surrender, and that's why you had so much problems.
Well, and that's why Hitler did what he did.
The way they carved up the Middle East, and how India was treated.
Well, and
then Prussia and Russia and all that.
Yeah. And how Hitler brought the rail car they used to make the Germans surrender in World War I. He brought that to France and made them sign in that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff.
Yeah, you don't forget.
Yeah, you don't forget that kind of stuff.
You don't have a clean surrender. Like, it seems as though what happened with Japan and their surrender worked.
I think that one is probably different than all the rest.
Yeah, well, VE and Europe was a mess. Because wherever there was a Russian soldier standing at the end of World War II, that became communist, and that became the East.
You ended up with that Berlin thing.
Berlin. Yeah, and they actually feared, the Allied forces feared the same thing because Russia, when they dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it wasn't until then that Russia declared war on Japan.
Yeah.
To get in at the end.
Yeah.
Kind of like, wait, what does that mean? Well, it's kind of like you're in an eBay, right?
Yeah.
And you have an item there, and there's 2 minutes left in the bid that was 7 days long. You swoop in at the end. That's what Russia was trying to do, and they were trying to stand on that soil. It's like, you're not.
And that's why Patton was like.
And they thought that Patton said we should go in and destroy Russia now, but Russia never got their soldiers over to the Asian continent.
But that led to Korea.
If they had done the invasion, then you would have had Russian soldiers there, and you would have had a similar situation that you had with North Korea and South Korea
and Vietnam,
and
to some degree, lesser degree.
I think the Chinese were standing on that territory,
right?
And that's how that turned.
Well,
because we were allies with China.
You got to remember back then though, we were concerned that China and Russia were in cahoots back then.
Well, had
because we didn't know.
Japan and China were at war. Japan was the adversary. We actually were quietly supplying China with arms before Pearl Harbor. That's where you got the Flying Tigers.
Yes. Yep.
We were giving them airmen and airplanes to attack the Japanese, and then Pearl Harbor. I mean, is it any wonder that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor? I mean, they saw us. We were neutral, but we were really supplying. We weren't.
Right.
No, we weren't.
Right.
We weren't. So.
And
but we chose. Look who we chose as our ally, China.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Charlie Wilson's war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. But again, we're off topic a tad.
Iran, Iraq.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We were supporting Saddam Hussein in the Iraq.
Well, I mean, we put the Shah in power in Iran.
And then he gets
Which
bounced.
led
they
to
take our hostages, so bad guy now.
Yeah.
Enemy now. So we'll saddle up at
We'll move over here now.
Jesus. All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about something fun. Coming up,
football,
college football first.
Well, and I meant to double check on it, but the Marlins here in Morehead City are going to allow some sort of high school baseball.
Really?
So let me get the story up so I can get it right.
They're the wooden bat league, right?
I'm not sure how they're going to do all that.
I think they're wooden bat. That's.
But yeah, college football actually starts Thursday.
This time tomorrow.
UAB and.
And Our Lady of Forward Passes.
UAB and like Northern Arkansas or somebody. And then there's games Saturday as well. So I guess they're cranking up.
When are the big divisions? SEC, ACC.
Miami of Florida plays next Thursday night, so I think maybe that's when they start.
Who is that now? Miami of Florida. That's ACC,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So maybe that's the first game that I saw on the schedule.
I love that. If anybody is college football, if you're a diehard ACC, if you're a diehard SEC, or if you're was it Big Ten? What's
Big
that?
Ten.
What's
Big
that?
12.
What's that parody you saw? Is it on YouTube now?
It probably is.
And how do you find it? It's funny. It's using
Isn't that great?
A male fan in his car and a is it a woman at first?
He's arguing with a woman.
It's like they're having they're going to dissolve their relationship, but it's really he's SEC, she's Big Ten.
Yeah.
And and then Nebraska calls her on the phone. He starts picking up people in the car, and like the ACC fan comes over and says, "I'll ride shotgun with you." Find that video if you love college football. It's hilarious. Even if you don't like college football, but you like college, you went to college or you went to the ACC, you'll appreciate that. YouTube
college football startup or something.
Shotgun.
Yeah, shotgun. Put shotgun in.
Shotgun, because she says that.
Yeah.
It's a hoot. But anyway.
All right, it says here, Morehead City Marlins and the Morehead City Parks and Recs will put on a 6-week fall season for players at Carteret, East Carteret, West Carteret, and Croatan.
So who's playing? High school kids or the?
Yeah.
Oh, well, so they got their baseball.
They get a 12-game season. Run from September 21st to October 28th.
And our three schools.
This is on Carolina Coast Online if you want to go look at
the
story.
Go to the website, Carolina Coast Online. So it's going to be our 3 high schools.
Yep.
East, West, and Croatan.
Yep. So they'll get to play some baseball.
Now I wonder if the girls are going to play softball.
I don't know. It doesn't say in this particular story, but you just know that somewhere that's...
And they're on the high school's fields.
Yeah. No. They're playing at the Marlins field.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's how they took the school system out of the equation.
To kind of having
right,
like
so they don't have to worry about what
that's fun.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I mean, high school, and your high school baseball field always looks so big, know? But you get to a professional type field, night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
It really is. I know at ECU, when I told you I took softball, but we played on... Yeah. We played on a real field where they have the fence and everything. Yeah. And it was really kind of cool, It's different. It's just different.
We played. We had. We didn't take softball as a course at Georgetown. We had it as intramural play. But no, seriously, we had intramural softball.
Yeah, I had a real college. I'm sorry.
We had intramural softball. And it was very competitive, and it was a lot of fun. But for the championship, and we played in the championship. My team, we played on the AstroTurf upstairs on Yates, and I had never played a ball game, baseball or softball, on AstroTurf. Oh my God, was that fun?
Yeah.
Fun for defense.
Let me tell you, football on AstroTurf is horrible.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, for defense, it was great because
the
bounces are true.
Yeah.
But when you lay out the baseball field on AstroTurf and you're sliding in the second base, you know what you're doing. You're sliding on this carpet.
Yeah.
Ugh, it burns.
It's horrible.
And then when you're playing football on it, and we did too, it's fuzzy cement. It's hard. It's nothing like grass.
You know,
It's nothing like grass.
off
God, that was
subject
fun.
real quick. In Intermules, we had a chance to go to New Orleans and win. We're planning the regional game to get to New Orleans to play at halftime of the game for flag football.
Yeah.
And I threw 2 interceptions and we lost.
We played flag. Was this in college?
Mm-hmm.
We played flag football in college, and it's probably the same rules. I forget if it was 11 on 11 or 7 on
7 on 7.
7 on 7. And how fun was it to play defensive line? Because you know the offense has to stay still, and you
just run after the quarterback.
And it was automatic rush.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of fun. I love flag football.
Yeah, we
You know, it'd be fun. Get like 14 guys like us, 52 to do it out. And have an ambulance standing by a crash cart and play flag football. I went back to one of my college reunions, I think, and it was like, Christ, I'm out of there. Maybe in the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like 2003, something like
Yeah.
that. Would that be about right? I graduated '83, and my group of guys we hung out with that played basketball all the time. It was about 7 or 8 of us that played all the time. We said, "Hey, let's go play." And there were outdoor courts out front of McDonough, and
Wow.
Our wives were watching. So what are we? 40 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Playing 4-on-4. And oh my God, I think half of us are gonna have a heart attack out there. I hadn't played in years. Now we're on asphalt.
No.
Playing against.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. I love going back.
We had Intermules at ECU. We won the 3-on-3 as well. We got to play at the Charlotte Hornets halftime.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
won
big deal.
we won the East Coast.
Yeah.
But it was kind of unfair. We had guys. Everybody on our team had played somewhere, so it's kind of unfair, to be honest.
We had a very basketball intramurals. I think they
Highly competitive.
It's highly competitive, and I forget, but I think if they grouped it in tiers, because like the A flight was the varsity players weren't allowed to play in intramural for obvious reasons. You're not gonna have Patrick Ewing out there getting hurt, he running into his shin, but you had like the custodial staff at Georgetown playing, and like John could have picked up a few players from them.
Absolutely.
They were good.
At ECU, we had 2 divisions. We had independent and frat. Now, one of the frats, they had like tall guys that played volleyball and so forth, and they were really good. They won all the time, so they automatically went to the finals tournament. Then the independents, the track team had a team, the football team had 2 teams.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And then like there was another one that was pretty good.
Probably baseball.
And then there was us.
I imagine baseball would be pretty good.
Yeah.
But football's good because they can get down low in the paint.
We had they had one team. It was a lot of the big guys, and they were really tough.
Yeah.
But we were loaded. The team we had, we won it 3 years in a row.
That's cool.
I mean, we were loaded. We had guys that had played at like Lenore Ryan and Marist and places like that. And
when we weren't playing organized intramural, we were playing every day. I mean, it was like college is great because it's like, hey, 2:30 in the afternoon, our classes are done.
Yeah.
Let's go to Yates, and then you come home. You didn't even shower.
The
You just
best
went to
shape-
the cafeteria. You were in the best shape.
the best shape I ever got in is I had left school when I went to Florida. When I came back from here and went back to ECU, my classes were at 8 and then 11, and then I was out at 2. And I didn't work until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So every day I'd go to class, and in between that I'd go to the gym because they had just built the rec center at ECU. Tells you how old I am.
Yep.
And I'd work out, play ball till 11.
Yep.
And then when I get out of class at 2, everybody would start playing pickup in the gym. So I'd play again till about 5. In about 2 months, I was in really, really good shape. And I look back now like, man.
I know. And it's just wonderful.
I really don't think I could do it anymore, get in shape, unless I did like one of those shows where they take you somewhere.
You just gradually get back into it. So
there's no such thing.
But
football begins this weekend. Our college professional begins next weekend.
College starts.
College starts this week.
Next
Thursday.
NFL starts Thursday.
Next Thursday.
And
Yes.
who would that be? Are they going to pit the Super Bowl teams?
The first game. No. The first game is. Oh shoot!
But
If you hadn't asked me, I could have told
But
you.
the really cool thing about, I think, for people who are living around here, Carteret County,
Yes.
is that the Pittsburgh Steelers signed Swansboro High School standout DeAndre Tompkins, who went to Penn State, played there in his college career, and then
Texans and Chiefs. First game Thursday.
Oh, Chiefs is good. That's cool. He nearly made it with the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles. He was cut on the last day. He was picked up by an XFL team, the Washington.
Scored a touchdown.
And scored, and then their season was canceled because of
They
COVID.
canceled their season, yeah.
But he was signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we were going to see how deep their wide receivers or special teams are. But here's a really cool thing. Minimum salary for an NFL player this year is $610,000. And boy, I hope DeAndre stays the whole season because he is a wonderful young man. He was a terrific student at Swansboro High School, an outstanding athlete.
Good family. His
And
mom's
great family.
great.
Yep, mom's still in Hubert. And he went to Penn State and had a nice career there. And he's just a top-notch kid. He is like the wind. He is as fast.
He ran a 4.33 on his pro day coming out of Penn State, which is essentially like the combine. And he had hoped to run a 4.2, but was a little bit slow. But 4.33 is that's pretty quick.
I saw him. He was at. He came to several football games last year, hoping to hear from an NFL team after he had gotten cut by the Eagles.
Yes.
And I had a chance to talk with him on the sidelines before the start of some Swansboro games, and I said, DeAndre, I said, at that time the New York Giants were. He said his agent said the Giants were looking at him, and they were already in week 1 or 2 of the season. And I said, DeAndre, I said they'd be a fool to pass you up. I said, you are as fast as the wind. And he said, you know what? He said, it's not about. He said, running a 4, what you just said, a 4.3 is a straight line.
Yes.
He said, the difference in the NFL is you have to have speed, but you have to leave the line of scrimmage and be at a predetermined spot in a certain amount of time because that's where the ball's going to be.
Yep.
The problem is you got a cornerback here that's trying to throw your timing off or knock you down.
That's it.
So he said
And
that is
it's
a challenge.
it's not 4 seconds.
No.
I mean, if you're like, for instance, if you're the first read, you better be there in like a second and a half.
Right, because the quarterback doesn't have much time to release.
He looks at you, and if you're not open, he looks at the next guy.
So I said to him, I thought this was interesting, and I said to him, coming out of Penn State, which is in what, the Big 12?
Big Ten.
The Big Ten. The Big Ten is, I said, you know, the players there are so big. And I said, but even at the NFL level, they must be even bigger. And surprisingly, he said, no. He said, in college, he said they were bigger on average. In the pros, they're less heavy. They have less weight because they're trying to lose weight to build more speed. Speed is king in the NFL because it's with all that velocity. If you have the speed, you're going to have the weight, but not as much. So these players out there in the NFL are less. They're not as heavy as in college. They're leaner, and but they're fast.
They're incredibly
fast, and you don't appreciate that. If you ever stand on the sidelines of you covering games, you stood on the sidelines of a high school game, maybe a college game or two, but there's no comparison to the pros.
No. It's
I don't know how they get out of a play. You know, I mean, they're just
those guys are really fast, and that's why I think so many of the skill guys, particularly the wide receivers and the quarterbacks, have difficulty coming from college to the pros. Well, because it's much faster.
You know, and DeAndre, he doesn't have an ounce of fat on him, but if he's 175, 180, that's about it.
Well, I just looked at their roster, and they got 3 legitimate receivers, so that probably leaves 3 other roster spots open depending on what they do with kick return and punt return.
So I think that.
So he's got an outside possibility.
Yeah, because you recall the receivers the Eagles had when he was in camp. They were all stars.
Well,
they were deep and they were talented.
They were coming off a Super Bowl, and some of those guys turned out to be not as good as they had hoped.
They could have used them.
They could have used them because at the end of last year they were down to nothing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't. You look back, they should have kept it. But
because you can't coach speed. You can't teach speed. You can't coach. You can coach it, but you can't teach it.
No, and again, maybe he was pigeonholed as a punt returner or a kick returner or something. Maybe
I don't think they gave him any shot at special teams with the Eagles.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Again,
I don't think so.
I think one of the things that gets lost in professional sports and even college to some degree, it's really about timing and the chance you get when you get there.
Yep.
Because there are very few Michael Jordans of the world that probably would have made it anywhere. Mm-hmm. Mostly, it's about your chance of playing. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. We were talking about it a few weeks back. They wanted him to be a defensive back everywhere. Everywhere but Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And then he got to Texas Tech, and they had 2 guys that were being looked at by the NFL in front of him when he first got there. Just so happened one of them transferred, and the other one got hurt or something, and all of a sudden he's on the field.
Yeah.
But barring that, when does he get on the field? When does he prove he can play?
Yeah.
I mean,
it must be. I mean, it must be. I mean, we've never had this problem, but it must be. If you have such a talent and schools are looking at you, first of all, where do you go? And then, who's going to give me as much PT playtime? And what's the coach? And what's the end after I get out of college? If I think I'm pro material, whatever sport it is, what are my chances of that? And then, if I don't get into any type of pro level, what are my chances as a person making something in life? That's what was remarkable. This is kind of a similar subject with John Thompson, who just passed away a couple days ago. At age 78, the coach at Georgetown he was most proud of, and the number changed a little bit. He's most proud of the number 75. I read somewhere it was 76. The number of students that went through his program that got a diploma, a degree from Georgetown.
A degree from Georgetown.
It was 76 got it out of 78, and I think those two players were Allen Iverson and Michael Graham. I think those were the two.
And Michael Graham had some difficulties.
But he had some. Allen just went into the pros.
Allen just went to the NBA.
Yeah, but I thought it was John Thompson. On his desk in his office at McDonough Arena, he had a basketball that was deflated, and that was his symbol to all the players that came through to his office. And he said, "What are you going to do with yourself when the air's out of the basketball? In other words, you don't have the ball to play with, and that's your life or your career. What are you going to do when the air's out of it? Because not everybody that went through that program, those 76 or 75 players, made it to the NBA.
Oh, very few of them did.
No, very few did.
When you really get down to it.
But the remarkable ones are like, was it Scott Blaylock?
Mm-hmm.
He was a good guard in the early 80s, late 70s, and he became a Wall Street financier.
Yeah.
Because these kids John would put them on. Like Patrick worked on Capitol Hill over the summer.
He'd get them internships.
He'd get him internships, and that's great. He had connections. Yeah, he had connections, and he used it for the good.
He used it for what he thought was right.
And he kept those kids, on a straight path. He was a father figure to
I'll say this about his program. You could really attribute this to Carolina, Duke, some of the bigger boys. Over a course of time, you're talking about a lot of players in and out of those programs. 10, 12, 15, 20 years. All right. The one thing I always look at is this. How many disgruntled players are there that are on TV saying bad things about your program? When you don't have that, that speaks volumes to A, the coaching staff, if it is long-term like John Thompson or Dean Smith, and B, the entire program, because that means that they were looking out for you.
Yeah.
They gave you opportunities to do stuff outside of basketball, outside of, athletic.
They were saying, some of the players were saying, and I think it was Ron Blaylock, not Scott, but Ron Blaylock. But John Thompson was very secretive. He was very protective of his players, and that was the whole Hoya paranoia.
Right.
To the point where they would actually put masking tape, black boxing packing tape, on the doors so you couldn't look in at McDonough. But the players said some of the practices was just us sitting on the bleachers or the floor, and John just talking to us about life. Imagine that. Yeah. First of all, you're at a great place. You're at a great program. You're standing around upperclassmen who might be Dikembe Mutombe or Patrick Ewing, and there you are. And there's John Thompson, and this is practice for today. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, and that's
awesome.
what I think. That's what the great ones do. I think far too often we have this image in our head of the Rick Pitino's that they just pump these kids in and out, and they really don't seem to care that much after they're gone.
Yeah.
And I use that name, and I could be wrong. I'm not on the inner workings of his programs. He's just been in trouble a few times, so it kind of speaks to what it is.
But you talk about players not criticizing the program. Very few do. Imagine like the players who went through Indiana with Bobby Knight and then Texas Tech.
And that's my point. They don't say negative stuff about Bobby Knight.
No.
That's look. I probably couldn't have played for Bobby Knight.
Well, I think the players that realize they can't play with Bob or don't want to play realized it earlier. Larry Bird, right?
And they go somewhere else.
And he went to Indiana State.
Right.
I mean, what a step down that must have been.
But I mean, when they don't speak poorly of him, and they were in the program, I think that speaks volumes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even Duke has had a lot of players in and out, and when you're bringing in 5 McDonald's All-Americans, and these are the elite, and 4 of them turn out to be you would think somewhere along the way there'd be some bad blood.
Yeah.
You just don't see a lot of that with these guys. So clearly they're trying to help these guys in other areas. And I think as they mature, they understand what their opportunities were and what they got out of it.
John Thompson was a great person,
Right.
great individual, and I think look at the you can see the tributes to him. You can go into YouTube by now, but I think one of the most stirring tributes was, and it wasn't done this past week. It was done 4 years ago when Allen Iverson was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It's hard to think that way.
Yeah.
But Allen said that
He was crying.
John Thompson. It was a Jimmy V moment. I think the way Jimmy V spoke at the ESPYs. Allen said that John Thompson saved my life, and he did.
He went through the whole
He
story.
did.
Actually saw that last night.
It was a 30 on 30.
Nah, it was just on my feed.
So Allen Iverson, great. I mean, oh my God, to watch him play.
He spoke briefly about that Hampton Institute. Incident.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so he talked about how John saved his life and gave him an opportunity and all that. So.
I think the neat thing about, I just talking about the experience of watching John Thompson and watching Georgetown basketball as a student and then later as an alumni. There was no mystery that you looked at 20 years down afterwards and said, "Boy, that was really something back then. We really never realized what we had." No, we knew what we had. I think it was awesome.
I think what gets lost in I think a lot of, because outside of Georgetown back then, he was probably not looked at in a favorable light.
He wasn't.
Right.
No.
I'm being kind.
Yeah.
Because of his team makeup. Let's call it.
No, you can say it. It was
Yeah.
because John came from Washington and went to Providence for college and then played for the Boston Celtics of all places, in Boston during the '60s
with Bill Russell, I might add.
Yeah, and Red Auerbach.
Well, I mentioned Russell because Russell was very political and social.
Yeah.
So he believed in a lot of stuff. He was kind of the de facto voice early on for the NBA and so forth back in those days.
But John took over a pitiful little Catholic school program at a lily white school. I went there, lily white school in the heart of
we
Washington.
figured 95. Yeah. 95%.
Well, no, honestly, we had Middle Eastern students, a smidgen of Middle Eastern students from Iran, and we had Asian students, primarily from China and Japan. That was our students of color, more or less.
Right.
The black people we saw on campus, I was saying it earlier in the intramural scrimmage, was the maintenance staff, the security staff, the cafeteria staff at Georgetown. The professors were all. It's a Jesuit school. A lot of them were Jesuit priests, but it was primarily a Caucasian school. And all of a sudden, this program starts in 1973, 74.
Is that when you got there?
And I got there in '79. Well, by that time, they had established themselves as a
small
college basketball.
You came in at the right time because they still weren't very good.
They weren't. We were playing in the small gymnasium. It wasn't any bigger than this room, and the Big East wasn't formed until 1980 or '79. I think it was 1980. Dave got it. But they got all the Catholic schools along the East Coast and they formed the Big East. So all of a sudden now, Georgetown and Boston College and St. John's and Providence and Seton Hall, they're on TV. And people are seeing this big guy, 6'11", and all the black players, Georgetown on their shirt. I go home for break, and people are saying, "Mike, you go to all my people in Pennsylvania go to Penn State."
Right.
My mom went to Penn State. My dad went to Kutztown. I go to Georgetown in Washington D.C. And all of a sudden they're saying, "You're going to a black college?" I'm like, "No, it's just, no. Where are you getting that from?" And they're like, "Well, look at the TV. They're all black." We had Kurt Call was the one white player, and he was from Illinois, the same town as doesn't matter, the Washington Post writer, or Bernstein Woodward, same town. Anyway, he was the only white player on the team. The managers were white, and there's John and his assistants. But
he took a lot of flack for that.
No, it was very the team. In Washington D.C., you either liked Georgetown, and that meant you went to college there, you worked on campus, or you were a black resident of Washington D.C. Because across the town was the big University of Maryland, led by Lefty Driesell, who had a mix of white and black players. But there was a lot of between the fan bases, and I'm talking about the alumni of Maryland. There was a lot of bad blood. It was racial because they thought John Thompson. No.
And well, ironically, a couple things from that. One, Dean Smith was one of his biggest offenders early on. I remember it pretty well. Number two, it's ironically led to John Thompson's presence led to a collapse of Maryland. Okay, throw out the Lynn Bias thing that happened, and if you don't remember, look it up. But then they fired Lefty. They brought in a guy from Dunbar because they were scared that John Thompson was going to get all the kids from those schools to go there because he had already made tremendous inroads.
So if the
and that guy was a complete failure.
So if the University of Maryland alumni disliked Georgetown because of it being led by a black coach, imagine how they felt when Lefty Driesell, white, was let go, and they brought in Bob. What was his name? A black guy from Baltimore.
He was from Dunbar.
They didn't like him at all. And what's John doing? He's taking Reggie Williams out of Dunbar. He's bringing players down from Baltimore. He's taking people from Washington D.C. onto their team.
What was that guy's name? That coach there? God, I can't remember. Maryland's coach.
He was there for 2 seasons, if that.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Gary Williams.
Then they hired Gary
Williams, and that was kind of brought it back again. But and then John develops a pipeline in New Orleans.
Yes.
It was just a wonderful time to be there. But John was more. He wasn't so much political as he was social. And when he won the NCAA championship in 1984, it was called the first time a black head coach won a major college title.
Yes.
He said, the story isn't the fact that a black coach won it. The story is it took this long till a black coach was in a position.
At a major university.
He just was a terrific. He could see the world in such a wonderful way.
He was just a good role model. Period.
And then he has 2 good sons. Ronnie does analysis on. He's an analyst on TV.
Yeah.
And
he was just a good coach. He was just a good guy. Bob Wade.
That's it. Yeah.
John was just a good role model, particularly for inner city kids that didn't have a lot of role models. Put it that way.
But I tell you what, he made me proud as a student there, knowing that
And you may have been in the minority. I don't know that you were proud of him.
We all love John Thompson.
Okay.
No, the student body loved John Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah. Outside the gate, different story.
I'll say this. It's like I give a lot of respect to Krzyzewski, even though I'm not particularly a fan, for his cultivation of the fan relationship at Duke with him and the basketball program. Obviously, it helps if you're winning. Obviously.
Yeah.
But, doing stuff like buying food for that little Krzyzewskiville thing they have where they get the tickets and all that. Things like that. Keeping Cameron, I thought that's
great.
Fantastic.
I wish we still had McDonough. I mean, we had McDonough. I wish they would have. I wish they would have built an on-campus.
They probably shouldn't have moved and did all those games.
We went to the Cap Center first.
Right.
You remember that?
And Cap Center was horrible.
It was horrible. It sucked.
Yeah.
And now they're downtown at the MCI Verizon, whatever it's called now, the Verizon Center, downtown Washington.
John built a juggernaut down there.
Yeah, but it's a great. I'm wondering when his service would be. I would consider going to it, but probably won't.
Well, he was definitely one of a kind. His son couldn't quite do, but he was a good coach, but he couldn't quite do.
He just couldn't get it over. He just couldn't get them over that.
He was right there.
Now Patrick's there. We'll see.
Patrick's having difficulties too. I don't know if the recruiting angle has changed for you guys. It might have, because make no mistake, you guys are a high-end educational institution.
It's a different game today where you have Kentucky's and Duke and the others that are doing one and done one and done.
But again, you guys may have restrictions on who you let in as far as academics go. Stanford does, Notre Dame does.
Duke's got to have standard. I mean, Duke. I mean, you would think they'd have higher standards.
I put it this way. I would guess, and I don't have insider knowledge on this. My guess is they do, but they give Krzyzewski certain passes when he says, "This is who I want."
That's like you like when you see like a Harvard coming into the tournament and they go in they advance a little bit, because those kids are they're brainiacs.
We had 2 kids from my high school go play for Harvard basketball.
Or a better example is in football when one of the academies for some reason has a good football team, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force. That's cool because those kids are just brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't care. They could be the best college athlete, but they still have to get through the program.
Essentially, the only way that those teams are ever any good is if they get a quarterback that happens to be really good. Because you go back and look at their history. Well, Rogers the one that jumped, but Navy just had one a few years ago that was pretty good.
And I think when you say basketball academy, who do you think of first? Besides Krzyzewski, I mean, he came out as coach, but Robinson, Admiral,
and Bob
David.
Knight.
Well, Bobby Knight, yeah.
Bobby was, they hadn't been, but the Admiral, yes. I saw the Admiral play at ECU.
David Robinson.
Yeah, we were in the same conference back then.
Yeah.
And,
he was a man among boys and just brilliant.
Let's be clear on this. He's one of those guys that is underappreciated as time has moved forward. Some guys, the legend builds. His is dwindled like Kareem. Kareem's the presence of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is underrated vastly. David Robinson's one of those guys. Make no mistake, he could play right now today.
Robinson.
Yes.
What about Kareem?
Kareem could play right now.
He's
today.
Kareem's what?
7'2". David was 7'1".
Yeah, David was big.
But they were agile. We like Kareem, for instance. My age group, a lot of us remember him because he was playing at the end with the Lakers and beating the Celtics. Well, he was 40.
I know. He was a buck first.
Go back and look at him at UCLA.
Yeah.
And
they won what? How many championships?
All 3 years.
All 3 years.
All 3 years he was there.
Yeah, so they didn't play freshmen, right?
Yeah. Well, as the story goes, the freshman team, when he was a freshman, beat the varsity that had just won the championship.
Yeah, he was a real deal.
What's that tell you?
So we're going along here, but go out on this note because you reminded me of something. Going Agile and NBA. We have a local product out of Kinston. Brandon Ingram,
ENC guy from Kinston, got the NBA's most improved
NBA out of Kinston.
Yep, most improved award, which is a big deal.
That's a big deal,
and it's a bigger deal for him because his contract's up.
And with the Pelicans, right?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
You think he'll stay there, or he's going to test the market?
Obviously,
he's going to test the market.
He's got to test the market just because, but I'm hopeful he stays there
because he got Zion to play with.
Right, and they got a chance to build something.
What's he looking at? Money wise? How big's that stack going to look?
$34 million a year, something like that.
Over what? 10? Are they going to do a long
Probably
term?
10, 8 at least.
So it'll be a 410 something.
It'll be a big one. The max deals they vary now if you sign with your own team kind of thing. But let's call it somewhere around 40 mil if you're maxed out. Now the cap will drop a little bit because of the revenue and the TV ratings and the COVID and all that. So the cap's going to drop, which will affect his max.
That's his pay for.
But let's call it 30.
So 30 to play, and then he's got shoes, he's got TV, radio,
he's
all
got
that other stuff.
Last I heard, he had Gillette, Adidas, and somebody else, one other one.
Coastal Daybreak.
Carteret COnnects.
And Carteret COnnects. And the Kingston. Wow, that's fantastic.
So he's doing okay. And just like DeAndre, he comes from a good family.
Yeah.
So
and he's a local guy. That's cool. And I think he still remembers Kinston.
Oh yeah, his family still lives there.
Sure.
Just like DeAndre's mom still lives over there.
Yep.
So and another one is Bam Abadiah's mom. He's from Pinetown, which is further down toward the water, but his mom still lives there.
That's cool.
So anyway.
Well, thanks
for signing off.
We'll
Thank
check
you.
Next time.
Good day.